Dear Minister, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much also for this wonderful introduction. And yes, I'm really happy to have finally made it. I actually took a course on a Sunday evening, how to become Icelandic in 60 minutes. I'm not quite there yet, still practicing. But I'm sure I'll take up the challenge in a number of ways, and it's really delightful to be here. And of course, also having experienced in the context of the work I do in the World Health Organization, the strong commitment to Iceland as a country to many of the things that we'll be discussing here in relation to health. I initially had a different title for this talk, but then I thought, coming to Iceland, I would talk about how the well-being economy meets the iceberg economy. And you will understand as I progress with my talk what I mean by the iceberg economy. There are various ways to express that. So what I will talk about is related very much to what also happened here in Iceland last year, the women's strike in Iceland. And I think countries that have had women's strikes have experienced how an economy works for 24 hours without women. The answer is it doesn't. And that is something that we need to consider much more than we have done so far as we look at the economy of health and well-being. We can look at this economy of health and well-being obviously as a path going somewhere, and doing that in a variety of ways, and there are also a variety of ways in which this is illustrated. How can we visualize the well-being economy? And you can see here, this is one of the graphs that's being used a lot with well-being in the middle. You get all kinds of Venn diagrams. We discussed that yesterday. And you do have this issue of gender equity on this graph, but not really to the radical extent that I think it needs. So if we look at the economy of well-being as an approach also to decision-making, making well-being the political choice, then we have to include this issue of gender equality in a totally new way, and this is the point I want to make today. So many of the speakers, and this was my challenge also preparing this speech, saying I'm going to be there on the second day and everything that has to be said about well-being has been said the day before. But I think if we again, visualize for ourselves that when we speak about good health and well-being, it has strong social, economic, and ecological dimensions. And that actually only recently have we learned in discussing the well-being economy how strong also those elements of the ecological dimensions are, and that we need to factor them in. But also what we have learned is that we are not doing well. And one of the recent human development reports really brought this home, I think, and I would really recommend this report to all of you because it reflects what many people are experiencing right now in real life. They gave it the title, Unsettled Times, Unsettled Lives. And of course, referring to the fact that our world is in extraordinary transformation, and that some colleagues at the WHO call it perma-crises, that instead of having, this acute crisis, there's actually this feeling that it's permanent, that these uncertainties are affecting our lives in so many ways. And the UNDP speaks about these new levels of uncertainty, and you can see on this one graph that for the very first time, actually, and only partly related to COVID, did the Human Development Index decline. And if you look at data related to SDGs, and many of you are very active in this area, you will also know that we are far from reaching them, that a number of them have declined, and that actually the SDGs in relation to health are those that have progressed the least over the last years. So there is a real challenge here if we want to bring together this overall societal development, the stagnation and sometimes rolling back of health and health systems, and the feelings of people and populations. We do see in the overall economic discussion that some economists are actually waking up. And I found it very interesting that a couple of Nobel Prize winners have actually had a change of heart. And even a economist that is very aware of social and inequality issues, like Angus Deaton, has said, we've done something wrong. We've neglected power. We've neglected power relationships in society, and we have let social justice be subservient to markets. And the minister also just referred to that, also related to the enormous commercialization of our societies and our lives. And he also says our methods, our economic methods, neglect the long term. But I think what was probably one of the most important things he said is we economists, we are often sure we are right, and we will not be questioned. Another famous economist, Nobel Prize winner Joseph Stiglitz, actually then goes on to say, yes, if all that is happening, what's this with our language that we economists actually use? You know, what does free mean? What are free markets? And he also says very clearly that without regulation, we do not enhance people's freedom. And this is one of the key discussions also as democracy is questioned in many of our countries, and you will have watched the European elections, is that we have juxtaposed regulation and freedom. And this is something that Ronald Reagan started, and too many politicians have picked up. Instead of seeing regulation actually as a mechanism that allows certain freedoms in society and actually restrains those that take freedom from us. But the really interesting thing is the recent Nobel Prize winner, a woman. And you can see here Claudia Goldin. And as I was researching this, it hit me, you know, there's always lots and lots of reporting on the Nobel Prize for Economics, usually going to men. You just saw two of them. There was very, very little reporting on the work of Claudia Goldin. And perhaps it was because Claudia Goldin says women are now at the center of the world's economies. And she analyzes that. She analyzes that in relation to paid employment, in relation to unpaid employment, in relation to education, in relation unpaid employment, hidden care work, and of course the whole issue that women largely now can determine the birth rate. And this is where I come to the World Health Organization. Because the World Health Organization established a WHO Council on the Economics of Health for All. And this was an all-women's council. chaired by Mariana Mazzucato, a famous women economist, and I was happy to serve on this. And the key message from this report is that together we can build economies that value and promote health for all. We no longer discuss health drives economy. We say the value of health should be driving economies. And that is a major difference. And we were very happy that under the leadership of Finland and supported by Iceland, this World Health Assembly adopted a seminal resolution that actually put forward to member states the directions in which we need to go if we want to establish an economy of health for all, which means valuing health for all, which means financing health for all, which means investing in health and health services, and investing in the capacity of a strong public sector. And this was not the only thing that happened at this year's World Health Assembly in relation to well-being. And actually, some commentators have said that this World Health Assembly was a seminal moment in global health governance in relation to the issues that are important to a well-being economy. This resolution and this report on the economics of health for all, a big resolution on the interface between climate and health. I've mentioned those planetary dimensions. But then also something the minister has also referred to, the well-being society. And WHO adopted, the member states adopted a resolution on the well-being society, on a framework for integrating well-being into public health with a health promotion approach. And here you will find many of the points that we have also raised in the discussions. But I think one new element that I have not heard much about over the last day was integrated here, and I think that's absolutely critical in terms of the well-being in our societies. It says the goal is promoting equitable digital systems that serve as public utilities, contribute to social cohesion, and are free of commercial interest. So I believe point one that I want to make, that as we progress with our discussions of the well-being society, the well-being economy, health and well-being, that this digital dimension, this enormous digital transformation has to be part of it and has to have much more consideration. As we look around, we can see that, of course, there's been a significant amount of work on well-being societies, well-being economy. Many of your countries are involved in this OECD work on well-being. You can compare yourself to other countries. The OECD has been doing what many of us have been asking for, to try and construct measures beyond GDP. And gender appears in different ways, as you can see here. The gender wage gap, for example, is an issue that is taken up. But and I go back to Professor Goldin, there is something more that is going on. And we have not yet progressed in terms of the gender equity agenda, in terms of the well-being agenda, to actually truly reduce the gender divide. We are still far away from that, and this is her famous graph where she also tries to show how the normal work, which she terms as greedy work, which is usually done by men, which doesn't leave space to do anything else, leads to the fact that women continue to do all the care work and usually reduce their paid work. And even for those who love GDP, this should be a message, because if this gender employment gap were closed, GDP per capita could on average increase by nearly 20%, if you want to use that old measure, but you relate it to equity. So there's a load of suggestions of measures beyond GDP. You all also know this donut model. But Kate Raworth, who was also on our Council on the Economics of Health for All, made this very strong point that if we look into these new types of economies, we need to look at care work. And we need to understand both the economic contribution of care work, but also how essential care work is to well-being. And essential in two ways: those that get care and those that give care. And during COVID, we saw how women's health actually deteriorated because the major care burden was on them. WHO has also actually just this year produced a report. It's called Fair Share for Health and Care, where they analyze this situation. So what should we be doing? Now, a number of countries, and the minister also alluded to Iceland, but we know it from others, this is Australia, are actually moving towards measuring what matters. But even this measure is not totally correct in terms of the unpaid care work and how it is produced in societies. So we need to fill that gap, and we need to show in the accounting that countries do what this actually means. And again, it's a question of how you want to look at it, the amount of care work that is given, the amount of care work that is given in low-paid jobs, and the amount of care work that, care jobs that would actually be created if a fair bit of that care work were translated into paid employment. Why do I underline this so much? Any one of you who has been in WHO over the last 2 years will be aware that one of the greatest challenges we have is the health workforce crisis. And I'm sure you have it here in Iceland and in your countries. And therefore, unless we address this issue and the well-being issues related to it, we are not going to resolve the challenge and the crises of our health systems. So I've said we need to budget for unpaid care work, and we need to factor in, and this is where my iceberg comes in, we need to factor in what one female economist has called the female underwater economy. And this is a term I really liked. Many people use this iceberg to show the healthcare system and all the determinants below. Well, please add unpaid care work and the female underwater economy when you do that. The World Economic Forum has also just produced a big report on the care economy that I would like to recommend to you. And they say, the World Economic Forum, care underpins the entire global economy. Let that sink in. Care underpins the entire global economy. Therefore, if we want to develop further and deep dive into the well-being economy, we need to factor in care. So, no well-being economy without factoring in the care economy, because also if we do this, we realize that much of the wealth of our societies is produced by women and needs to be measured, and that it happens on the backs of women at the cost of reduced well-being of women. And there are many data on that. I don't need to go into them in detail. So, several messages before I close. One, many member states do reports on women's health, but they only report on women's health. They don't report on the contribution of women to health. And I would like to recommend that all reports on women's health actually become integrated reports that show both sides of the picture and that also show the price of caring and the unpaid care economy to women's health itself. We also need to consider that the care economy is a global economy, and that increasingly, each country, I guess including Iceland, is trying to import women from all around the world. And this care economy is a very big and growing economy, and also an economy that's incredibly exploitative of women. And so I think we also have to be very aware that the global health crises and what we in the global north are trying to do is a real problem also for many people and many women in the global south. And we do need more sufficient investment in well-supported global health workforce and, of course, particularly nurses. So if it's true what Golden, the Nobel Prize winner, says, women are now at the center of the world's economies, then they need to be at the center of a new economics of health for all, and they need to be at the center of the well-being economy. And of course, and I just thought I'd put up some of these pictures, when the well-being economy was sort of really established, these were some of the women that helped us move forward. And I think it's important to also pay credit to them because they have seen the contribution that the well-being economy has for women, and that it is one way of actually bringing this notion of unpaid care and the underwater economy to give it more visibility. On a positive note, there are transformation networks all over the world. This is a network of female leaders that is actually working to co-create a revolutionary architecture for the global economy, bringing the well-being economy together with the care economy. And I'll leave you with this message: if women stop, the world stops, care stops, health is endangered. And here's another women's strike, which I was able to attend in Switzerland. Thank you very much.